NEC's been working on this for a long time, obviously, and but it's something that in this market, I think if you get into the advertising space, on the advertising side of digital signage, the advertisers want to know who's looking at the image, and the demographic, and the age, and so it's fantastic technology. So but it's again, there's a lot of regulation that you have to work your way around, but I think it's for the future when you talk about mobile apps and people with their phone, and all of these technologies are going to come together. It's a market that continues to evolve every year. I mean, it's an amazing market. There's a camera and it looks at the person that's looking at the screen and recognizes the age, the gender, as much information as it can report. And then builds a report for the advertisers to see who looked at the screen, and so that we can build a demographic profile of the network that's advertising in the location. No, it's still right now, we have it in the booth and we're not using it for any advertising networks, but I think that in the future, I think that it'll definitely something that's going to happen. It's funny because I just came out of a meeting with one of these big ad networks, a company called AdSpace out of New York, great network in shopping malls, and that's where facial recognition would come in really handy in shopping malls to see who stops and looks at the screens. But I mean, it's a market that's so fragmented, and when you spend time with the digital buyers, and whether it's in out-of-home space or the digital space, people that are used to buying internet, the people used to buying internet are used to an automated tool like DoubleClick or Atlas, like that's from Google or Microsoft, and it's so easy to buy internet advertising. It's so easy to buy TV advertising. But when it comes to digital signage and advertising networks, it's the most consuming, complicated buy that you can imagine. Because all these networks use a different content management software. And there's no way that you can actually make an offer and send an ad to all these screens without sending the ad to an IT manager that puts it in the playlist. You hope he puts it in the playlist. Then you need to wait for the reporting, and then you consolidate that so that you can consolidate an invoice to your client. And that needs to change. And we've built a platform. There's another company, we're happy to hear, there's another company that recently, like a company called Vistar, that's trying to do the same thing, and we welcome that. We welcome the competition, because sometimes if you're alone, you're like, wow, you wonder if you're trying to do the right thing if nobody else is trying. So they're trying to do the same thing as we are, and I think it's good. It's good for the industry, because this industry is not going to scale if there's no automation. We need, this industry needs to modernize itself. And right now it's a big challenge. A lot of these networks, I mean, you have the top 10 networks that are doing okay. A lot of smaller networks are unfunded. I mean, they have a lot of open inventory, and it's hard for them to invest in technology. So, but we've been evangelizing. I've been talking to you for a few years. We've been evangelizing this for a few years and working on the technology. And I spend most of my time at this show. I mean, I'm lucky. I have all of our salespeople there, like working on selling more hardware, and I'm actually spending probably 90% of my time here this week talking to ad agencies and ad networks. On the market, on the technology, and how it would make their lives easier, and how they would get more business if they use an ad platform, like an ad serving tool. And it's just a long process. The media planners, the technology, I mean, the advertising community, I mean, I used to think, before I got into this, I used to think that everybody's got this perception that advertising is for tons of cool people and all that. And then you realize, I don't want to make any enemies in the advertising space, but then you realize that it's such a complicated, fragmented, and to some degree, not very efficient, from an IT perspective, business, and nobody really knows what everybody's doing. You ask somebody like, what's your exchange? Do you have a demand side platform? How do you do your billing? How do you do, the planners don't know that, the buyers don't really know who does the billing and the reporting, and it's very fragmented. I've learned more in the last 4 years than I care to know, than I ever thought I was going to know about the advertising space. We do a lot of digital. I mean, most of our spending is, we don't do print, and we don't do, we moved on. I mean, for our kind of we don't do consumer. We don't, as you know, we don't sell TVs for the home like some of our competitors. We don't have to worry about that. I mean, our main customers are government, their education, their hospitality, their corporate. So we don't think that print's good. So we do most of it. We do digital. I think that's not. I don't think that changes too much. Just because there's smartphones and tablets and especially in our space. Like it's not like you're going to walk around and always look at your smartphone. I mean, sometimes I do it myself. I'm looking at emails, but if you're in an airport, I mean, yeah, you got apps like FlightAware and things like that, but I mean, you're going to look up at the screen to look at your flight information display. If you walk into a Burger King or a McDonald's, I mean, you're going to look up at and they're all changing their displays to digital menu boards. If you're in retail, so the key is the content. I mean, if you got to somehow grab the attention, and if there's no sound, it's even harder, because sound is a big way to grabbing attention from somebody. You can be walking, and even if you're looking at your smartphone and you hear something, you might look up and grab your attention. But then you need to have the interaction where the customer is going to keep looking at the screen, and so the content is so important when it comes to that. But again, it's like, I'll give you a good example. At O'Hare, I don't know if you travel, like I travel on American, which is funny because United has all NEC screens and American has Samsung. But we travel with American, and in Terminal 3, there's a big Accenture board, which is actually a digital touch board, like interactive board. And it's a 3x3, it's a very big thing. It's where the terminal H and K gates branch off, and there's never anybody touching the board, never. And I'm in there every week. I have 3 million miles. I mean, I'm in the airport every week. And you never see anybody because the content's really not, and unless it's interactive, yeah, it's a sign. It's almost like you have to write, come up and touch me, or something like that, or else people won't come up. How would you know that it's interactive? So you got to think about, when you're a network operator, you do have to think about the behavior. People are hurrying to their gates, and they got a flight to catch, and sometimes they're delayed, and who are you trying to get to interact with the screen, and how do you get them? I mean, if you don't know that it's interactive, why would you go touch a screen? So those are the challenges that the network operators need to really think about, and when they work with their content providers or the people that put this structure together, to make sure that they can somehow tell people that this is an interactive display. We had the best year. 2012 was the best year that I've had since I joined the company in 2003. It's a little early to tell, obviously, because January and February are very difficult months. We did pretty well in January. They're very difficult months in this industry for a few reasons. Seasonality, the people end their budgets in December, and then you gotta get going. The weather, people think it's, the weather in the Northeast is always tough on business. You got a lot of things happening. February's a short month, but it's looking pretty good. I think year over year, January and February is going to be better than last year. So I'm optimistic. I mean, when you have your best year in 10 years, you don't know if you can replicate that. And the economy, I mean, I think I'm worried about those new tax laws. I think that might affect retail sales because, and it's not just the high income people. I mean, everybody's going to be affected to some degree. And I think there's going to be less spending in retail. And then it's a domino effect. If there's less spending in retail, the retailers are not going to invest in their infrastructure. Maybe they won't put so many screens in the stores. And then, or IT infrastructure, PCs, and back office operation. And then it just affects, it's a domino effect. So I understand that the government thought that we have to fix the economy and all that. Everybody's got their own ideas of how it should be done, but I am worried a little bit about the outlook for this year from an economy perspective. We'll see how it goes. I think that when it comes to anything that's going to be in the home, whether it's for your fridge or your appliance in your home and managing, your lights and sound, I don't think that from a signage perspective, yeah, it's going to help because there's people need to do the content, people need to drive that information. So there's some companies that are here today that are going to jump on that bandwagon. I mean, I don't think that consumers are not going to let advertise. You're not going to let an advertiser on your fridge, on your little LCD that's going to run, or your glass that's going to run your appliance. I mean, I think that would be crossing the line, so to say. So, I think from a business perspective, there's companies like NEC or Samsung or LG or whatever that are going to take advantage of those new technologies to sell more glass or to sell more software or things like that. I don't think it's going to bridge too much with the signage, except from a technology, like signage companies that might say, well, today we do a lot of hospitality, let's focus on the home market and see if we can get into that space. I think that's the biggest difference. I mean, you got a lot of new things, the smart TVs. I think you got to be careful with that, because somebody asked me, have you seen your competitors? They're building smart TVs, commercial grade product, and I'm like, I don't think that's. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but we have very strict standard at NEC. Like, you can't let people stream music. You're not going to let people stream YouTube or Netflix in an office. I mean, bandwidth is expensive. The IT managers are all over people that are trying to do. I remember Napster, and now it goes on to other things. It's like, so. Smart TVs, I think, in a corporate environment, I think that's going to be a hard sell. A clear definition between the corporate usage and the home usage. Yeah, I think there's going to stay that off surface. Yeah, for various education. For like I could see where even in like K-12 and even in daycare, where you would have a table where kids would just sit around the table, and instead of having a table with books, they'd have a table with glass, interactive glass. Exactly. I mean, yeah, that's a given. That's going to happen. Not today. We're looking, at. There's always a fine line between being the first to market or being too early or too late. So we're not. Today we're focusing on the areas where the most successful, like quick serve restaurants and retail, and we're focusing on that. But we have an advanced development group that's looking at all of those applications and need to decide which ones we want to focus on. One of the keys for NEC is to be focused on what we do well. Yeah, I mean, I think in some of the answers we talked about that, like with the interactive and trying to grab the attention, and you have to be careful with the content overload. Whether it's on one screen, you see networks that have one screens with 9 zones. I mean, that's just ridiculous. If you're an advertiser, I mean, and you see an ad on the screen and then there's 8 zones around it, that's visual overload. I mean, so you really have to be careful when it comes to the content, how it's created, how it's used, and it's king. I mean, that's it. The reality is, and that's why, by the way, we have a great relationship with a multitude of content management software companies. People always ask us, who's the best one? What's the best one? And I always say, because, we're lucky enough that we know them, I always say, well, what do you want to do? Because most of the great ones have a very focused area and strategy. So if you want to do flight information, these are great ones. If you want to do hospitality, if you want to do wayfinding, if you want to do interactive, and so we know, and we have our preferences, but there's way too many. There's over 300 global software companies, content management software companies, and that's not sustainable. I mean, there's going to be over time. There's going to be I think a little weeding out, but it's easy to stay in business because once a network decides to use a content management software company, it's very hard to change to somebody else. Digital signage, you got to get connected. We're focusing on our new products at the show this year. Like, we have our LED slim bezel and thin. We have products with the OPS, open pluggable standards. We have some NEC complementary product. We have facial recognition product. and I know that's a big topic in the industry. Like a lot of people, I have issues with facial recognition, but we're trying to educate people that they don't retain the image, and there's no database and things like that. But so we have that technology in the booth here, and so it's pretty exciting. It's always a great show for us.